Hi everybody, Professor Leach here. Today we want to go over the results for quiz X. So I put this quiz up a while ago. I can't remember when. I put this quiz up a while ago and I typed it essentially exactly like this, 2x/3y minus 1. Now, if you're thinking that this is not really clear how I wrote it, that's exactly the point. But we wanted to see how we write things. And we want to, more importantly, see how we ignore the rules we're supposedly following. So let me write down the three most common answers. These are the three answers that I accepted. So here's what we had. Here are the three answers that we had. We had some people wrote 18, some people wrote 2. I'm going to start with the most popular answer in this class. Some people said the answer is 2. The second most popular answer in this class was 11. And the third most popular answer in this class was 18/5. So these were the most popular answers. So this is popular answers. Now, I gave credit to all three of these. So if you put 18/5 and you still got a point, that's because I was accepting all three of these numbers as answers to this problem. Because this problem is really poorly written and has no business being on any kind of quiz where you're actually quizzing people on the order of operations or just evaluating expressions. No business. It's very badly written. So here's the frequency. Oops, not E, frequency. I tried to write frequency and I put an E at the end of it, which is funny because there's a thing called Dogecoin. It's a DOGE, and I really think everybody's mispronouncing that. I think that's just the literal spelling of how a dog would pronounce doggy, because it's like dog and then an E. And I think everybody just started reading it as Doge, and I think they're wrong. Not that anybody is right in this situation, but I think they're all wrong. I think it's pronounced doggy. So, but anyway, so in Math 120, that's y'all, 2 of you said 18/5, 9 of you chose 2, and 4 chose 11. In the trigonometry class, let's see, in trigonometry, 1 person wrote 11, 18 people wrote 2, and 15 wrote 18/5. And then in my calc class, 32 put 18/5. That was most popular. 20 answered 2, and 4 answered 11. So that was a little bit unusual. What we want to notice is, what I want to go over next is how 2, 11, and 18/5, these are the 3 possible answers, how you arrived at these answers and how you read the problem. Then we'll look at the most common thing that happened in each class and how no one or very few people were following the order of operations literally. So if you put as an answer 2, the way you read this expression is take 2x, divide by 3y, and then subtract 1. That was how you arrived at the number 2. You said this is 2 times 9 divided by 3 times 2, then minus 1. You grouped the 3 and the y together. So you grouped the 3 and the y together, because then you got 18 divided by 6, which is 3 minus 1, which is 2. So, or you did something completely different and got 2 by accident, but happy accident. So the read that you put on the problem was to put the 3 and the y together and divide by this product. Now let's take a look at, let's skip this one and go over to the 18 over 5. 18 over 5, you were reading the problem. If you put 18 over 5, and everybody who put 18 over 5 read the problem as 2x divided by everything that came after it. It says everything after the slash, that's going to be in the denominator. So they read it with these parentheses. And so they said 2 times 9 divided by 3 times 2 minus 1. So 2 times 9 is 18. 3 times 2 is 6 minus 1. And then, so that's 18 over 5. So if you got 18 over 5, this is how you were reading this expression. You saw the division symbol and you said everything after that is going to be in my denominator. These are the 2 most common things to happen. Look how many people said 2. We've got 20, 30, 47. Is this 47? That was very common. Over here, we've got 32, 42, 44, 49. The other most common thing. Neither one of these was applying a literal application of PEMDAS. Neither one. So PEMDAS is something that we supposedly teach you and say, oh, always do this. And then we immediately turn around and don't do it. We look at the very least, we look at the 3y as one thing. Let's talk about how you read the problem if you were looking at, if you got 11. So this is actually looking at it weirdly, which is the literal interpretation of PEMDAS. You read this as 2x divide by the 3 and then multiply by the y. So you're reading this as, without the parentheses, it would look like 2 times 9 divided by 3 times 2 minus 1. And the literal reading of PEMDAS, all of a sudden, if I don't write the 3y, if I write y with a value 3 times 2, all of a sudden PEMDAS is like, oh, now you do these separately. And so your 2 times 9 is 18. 18 divided by 3 is 6. 6 times 2 is 12. 12 minus 1 is 11. This one in the middle, this is the literal reading of PEMDAS. Using PEMDAS, we divide by 3, then multiply by 2, unless parentheses tell us to do otherwise. But all of a sudden, if I change the 2 for a y, we stick those things together and we put them in parentheses in our mind. This is not using PEMDAS, this is attaching the 3 and the y, or everything that comes after it, and not reading it as 2x divided by 3 times y, but 2x divided by the product of 3 and y. So this 11 is using PEMDAS, and that was the least common thing to happen. Only 9 people, 9%, less than 9% of respondents chose to follow PEMDAS. Everybody else applied the common reading, one of the common ways that we would read this. What this means is that our notation, the notation that we want to use, does not match the rules that we try to teach you. So I'm not blaming anybody for any one of these answers. If you did 11 because you were strictly following PEMDAS, or if you wrote 2 or 18 over 5, because I have a theory about this. I think that when you're in Cal 2, you've experienced a lot of rational functions, and so you tend to look for things that are going to make one fraction. That's just a theory. I have no way of testing it. That's just like a guess as to what's happening. But it's really important that on these two, if you answered 2 or 18 over 5, you are not using PEMDAS. Not using PEMDAS. Because you're not doing multiplication and division from left to right. You attached the y to the 3. Here you are not using PEMDAS. The reason that you're not using PEMDAS, you're not doing multiplication and division from left to right at the same time. You're attaching the 3 to the y. You're tokenizing the 3 and the y, making that one thing. You're reading it in parentheses, even though it wasn't written in parentheses. So that's one of the reasons that PEMDAS is a bad rule, because we don't do it that way. We don't read 3y as 3 times y, even though it literally means 3 times y. As soon as I put it under this division symbol, it means something else. And that's just bad rule making. This is when math starts to look like football, because the football rule set is terrible. The football rule set is terrible. I'm not blaming you if you're a fan of football, but if you think the rules make sense, you are absolutely 100% wrong. Those are dumb rules. Oh, wait, was his knee on the ground? What if his knee was not on the ground, but it's the ground that pushed the ball out? Wait a second. If you have to look at stuff in super slow-mo, then I'm sorry, your rules are terrible. At least baseball rules make sense. Doesn't matter if the ball was 3 inches off the outside corner of the plate. If the umpire says strike, that's a strike, so deal with it. I know that makes it difficult. But we're here to play a game, not to seek truth. You know what I mean? Like if it actually mattered, if the concern was literally that, if the concern was actually that the referee, we want the right call, and so we're going to check the ref, you wouldn't have a limited number of challenges. If the quest was the truth, you wouldn't have a limited number of challenges. But it's not a quest for the truth. It's satisfying a bunch of Monday morning quarterbacks. It's caving into your fan base. It's what ruined Star Wars. You caved into the fan base. Don't do that. So in this case, when you answered 2, you put the 3 and the y together. You're not doing multiplication and division from left to right. You're attaching the 3 and the y as one thing. You're in your mind, you put it in parentheses. So you're not doing multiplication and division from left to right. That's why you're not using PEMDAS. That's why I say you're not using PEMDAS, because you're not doing multiplication and division from left to right as instructed in PEMDAS, which is crap. PEMDAS is crap. You attached the 3 and the y, and in your mind, you put the 3 and the y in parentheses. You read the 3 and the y together. You read the 3 and the y together. This is a natural reading of that expression. It's a common reading of that expression. And it's something that we do very often. An important expression that comes up in various applications is 1 divided by 2 times the square root of n. And we often write this as 1 over 2 times the square root of n. That's how strong that reading, that attaching the 3 and the y, the coefficient and the variable together. It should be written as 1 over parentheses 2 square root of n. If we actually believe that PEMDAS was not trash, and we believe that PEMDAS was the way, we wouldn't write 1/2 square root n. We would write 1/parentheses 2 square root n. That's how we would spell this expression on a single line. But we know PEMDAS is trash. And so we see this expression and we just write this when it's in a single line, because we know that we're not going to be following PEMDAS. PEMDAS is like a speed limit. It's not really a rule and shouldn't exist as a rule if it's not really a rule, because now like a speed limit doesn't apply to everybody, so it shouldn't apply to anybody. Come up with a better rule. Does that make sense? Looking at the list of names, I could pick the people that would probably get pulled over for going 75 miles per hour and the ones that wouldn't be noticed. So the same thing is happening over here. You're not using PEMDAS because you put the 3, the y, and the -1. You put everything after the slash together in parentheses in your mind, which is a natural and, as you can see, a very common reading. So similarly over here with 18 over 5, you're also not using PEMDAS. What this means is that PEMDAS is a terrible rule. PEMDAS is a terrible rule. I'm going to snarkily put that in quotes. PEMDAS is a terrible rule because we don't follow it anyway. That's not how we read things. It's not how we read things. We don't follow it. It's not how we read expressions. We don't follow it. Bad rule. Get rid of it. 65 miles an hour is a terrible rule. It's not how we drive. We drive 80. 85% of the population, last time I heard a statistic on this, 85% of the population, if left to their own devices, would just go 80. We're comfortable going 80. That should be the speed limit. And then you just make it a hard speed limit. 80 is comfortable. Some of us are going to be comfortable going faster. Some of us are going to be comfortable going faster, but we shouldn't be comfortable going faster. But the speed limits, especially places where the speed limit is 55, the speed limit of 55 was designed to try to keep people alive in cars that were actively trying to kill you. So like if you like old muscle cars, you should realize that those cars, like a 57 Chevrolet or like a 67 Chevelle, those cars are actively trying to kill you. Modern cars will sacrifice themselves to save you at the slightest provocation. I've totaled a car going 20 miles per hour, but the car's like, "Oh no, look out!" and it threw itself in front of me. And well, I was driving. It threw itself in front of me and said, "Nah!" And it's like, oh, because it's not built like a car from the 50s or the 60s when we were designing cars that would just kill you. You know what I mean? So, bad rule. PEMDAS is a bad rule. It's not how we read the expressions, and we don't follow it anyway. The answer is to learn how to use parentheses so that we can speak clearly and communicate clearly. I shouldn't say speak, communicate clearly. The answer is to learn to use parentheses. So I actually have a solution. I'm not just complaining today. This is the reason that I'm focusing so much on reading expressions and learning how to write them properly, Because what we want to do is learn how to use parentheses to communicate clearly. Learn to use parentheses to communicate clearly, and then stop being lazy in our communication. Stop being lazy in our communication. What I mean by stop being lazy in our communication is that we have to think about what we're saying, how we are saying it, and most importantly, who we are saying it to and in what context. When I wrote this expression, 2x / 3y minus 1, I deliberately wrote this very badly because who I wrote the expression for was very different. It affected how my audience read the expression. Look at the big gap here, and the big gaps between 120 and 252. The audience matters. The context also matters. If I put this problem on a quiz, this is really badly written. If the point is I want you to come up with one specific number, I have not communicated this well. So the context is very bad. If we're far along and I want to make a reference to something and I'm talking to a bunch of people and we're doing like some highfalutin calculus and stuff like that, and I know that everybody in the room is going to read this as 18 over 5 as 2x divided by parentheses 3y minus 1, I could probably get away with it considering my audience and the context. But I need to stop being lazy in my communication. And if I want the 3y minus 1 in the denominator, I should just put it in parentheses. I need to learn to use parentheses so that I can communicate clearly, and I need to stop being lazy in the communication. Context matters. If this is a quiz, I need to write a better problem, a problem where people will definitely only come up with one answer. Context matters. Context matters. Your audience matters. Context matters. Make sure you are asking the question that you want to ask. Your audience matters. Make sure that they're going to hear the message that you want them to hear. Because some people will hear a different message than others. Any questions? I know this is just a math class, but one of the biggest stumbling blocks in math is communication of math. How the teachers take their understanding and communicate it to the students and teach the students to communicate their answers back to the instructor. The biggest problem in math is not that math is weird or math is hard. The biggest problem is the way we communicate it, because we forget things like we try to teach you tricks and like PEMDAS. That'll be an easy way to remember this. Nah, it's not, because that's not how we do things. I need to teach you to use parentheses so that you can communicate clearly. Then I also need to stop being lazy in my communication so that when I have a particular expression in mind, I write it properly and don't rely on some stupid rule that I know my colleagues wouldn't even follow anyway. My colleagues would probably not follow my colleagues would probably do get the correct answer. Because out of all the students, look at well over 100 students took this quiz. Only one student got the actual correct answer. One student. Out of all 3 of the classes, out of all 100 people, one person got what is actually the correct answer. And that's to call me out on my bullshit and say, dude, you trying to start a fight here? One person called me out that this question is terrible. And then to that I responded, it's like, oh, what? Them's fighting words. I'm just kidding. I said, them's fighting math expressions. Any questions? I like to do this. I like to do this particular evaluation because the one that makes its rounds on social media is this one: 6 divided by 2 times 1 plus 2. Don't answer this question. This question is crap. Whoever posted this is trying to get you into a fight, but not a fight with them. They're trying to get you into a fight with your friends. This person is trying to sow division. Do not fall for it. Write better. That's what the answer is. So you say, well, do you mean 6 divided by 2 times 1 plus 2, or 6 divided by 2 times 1 plus 2? If they don't answer, if they refuse to answer that question, they are trying to start a fight. Block them. Delete them. You don't need that kind of foreign disinformation campaign in your feed. You should delete your Facebook anyway, but that's just beside the point. Any questions? Yeah, you heard me, Zuckerberg. We should all delete Facebook. All right, so that was the point of this particular quiz. So don't worry about what your answer was. I was giving credit for all 3 of these answers because that is the correct thing to do. If you find that, if you become a teacher and you find that you've written a terrible question, make sure that you accept all the reasonable answers. Don't just expect people to say 11 because that's what you told them to do because you told them PEMDAS. Because if you're a teacher, don't teach people PEMDAS. It needs to go. It's a bad rule. We don't follow it. That's not how we read things anyway. Context matters. Your audience matters. Any questions? Comments? Snide remarks? Communicate clearly. Context matters. Your audience matters. I feel like those observations were relevant to something that recently happened here, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. All right, that's going to do it for today. That's going to do it for this week. Thanks for playing, everybody, and peace out.